can't see me, but I can see you. Do a little puppet show here.
I'll now proceed to entangle the entire area.
Ah, man, it feels good to be back. I have to apologize to you guys for the extended hiatus which I have subjected this channel to, but it has been an incredibly cold and busy winter. Been working a lot at my new job, doing schoolwork, just that sort of stuff. So I haven't had as much time to create content as I would have liked. But that being said, I'm here now. And I would just like to show you guys some of the stuff that I've been listening to. Hopefully give you some good recommendations for music that you could check out. Yeah, without further ado, let's get right into things here. These are primarily from 2026. However, some of these have appeared in previous videos. But overall, they're just records that I've been listening to a lot lately. The first of them is no surprise to anybody. An original copy of Vincebus Eruptum by Blue Cheer. Many people consider this one of the first heavy metal albums. Certainly, I would say, incredibly influential to that genre of music. You still have that sort of psychedelic sound, but overall, they're taking things up a notch in terms of heaviosity, and especially like just their levels of volume. You know, were unprecedented for the time period, and that's one of the things I don't quite like as much about that album. I certainly appreciate it thoroughly for how much it contributed to the progression of music. But I think the production is just sort of muddy on the album, especially when you listen to the drums and what they're doing. It's like I feel like the drums could be much more pronounced in the mix. Bass and guitar I don't really have a problem with. But yeah, just the drums. I feel like such heavy, fierce music should have a strong backbeat to go with it. And then the vocals are just like mixed super high. Yeah, but these are faults of the stereo mix. Not to say that they're completely alleviated with the mono mix, but I would say overall I prefer the mono mix just because the drums have a bit of a punchier sound. But mine is unfortunately a stereo copy. But I'm happy to have any copy because it's a groundbreaking album for a reason. Next up we have, let's see here. This was a 2017 release. It's Love's performance of Forever Changes live. There are a few other tracks on here as well. So it's a double album of their performance at the Glastonbury Festival in 2003. It is this concert, which comprises the majority of the album, takes up three sides, sides A, B, and C. Side D is a performance of theirs from 1970 in Sweden, I believe. And yeah, I mean, I think that particular lineup of the band was incredibly underrated, I would say, as much as that word gets thrown around nowadays. No, I think that era of the band, if you can even really call them Love, was overshadowed by the earlier work of the group, especially due to the fact that all the original members except for Arthur Lee had left. But I think, in all honesty, there were some very talented musicians in the second incarnation of Love that deserve to see some time in the sun. Yeah, so, alright, yeah, we can keep going here. Buffalo Springfield with their self-titled debut album from 1966. I picked this up at a flea market for, I think it was like $10 or something. The record itself it has some scratches, but overall I'd say it was worth it, to get. This is my copy here. I don't know if you can see any of the scratches here. Probably not very well. Lighting isn't great for that type of content. And you have a picture in the back here of all the guys. And it discusses their zodiac signs and some of their defining characteristics right here. But I think it's quite a mature album, I think, for a band that had just really started. I mean, certainly their production would get better as they got going, but I think when you look at the song structure of this album, they already knew what they were doing. They already knew how to make a good song. And especially right now, I feel like some of the songs really speak to me as an individual. Specifically, there's a song called Everybody's Wrong on here. And it has one particular line, I think. It is, finding what you've sought after all the times you've fought sometimes leaves you with the thought that perhaps you've just been bought. Which I know it's a real mouthful, but that speaks to me right now, especially at this point in life. Just because I feel like myself, I'm a junior in high school, or grade 11, I guess, here in Canada. But I'm getting like kind of to a point where I'm sort of ready to be done with my schooling, and I understand. I mean, it's something you have to work for, right? But it's been a long process, and I'm looking forward to finally being able to gain a little bit of independence and freedom, and be able to kind of like do what I want to do as I get older. Yeah, another thing that's worth noting about that record is on the back you might have noticed it stated that the record was in mono, but on the front they advertised the fact that it's in stereo. Well, which one is it? Well, to answer that question, I rigged up a little system on my own, whereby I disconnected one of my stereo speakers because I wanted to see what songs were in mono and what songs weren't. So I ran through the album. I didn't play the ones that were in stereo, but I found the ones that were in mono on the album, which is a common thing in the 60s. I mean, they were still experimenting with stereo as a medium for music. It was sort of seen for collectors, whereas mono was like the accessible way to listen to music. But a lot of artists from that time period, like their albums would be just an amalgamation of mono and stereo recordings, and sometimes too, even it'll say it's in stereo, and then all they ended up doing was taking a mono recording and adding reverb to it to make it sound bigger than it actually is, to encompass both speakers. So yeah, that's something you have to consider when you're looking at many of those older recordings. Yeah. Next up here, this is another really cool vinyl find that I happened to stumble across this winter. I believe I've mentioned it on the channel. I'm not 100% sure. That is the 13th Floor Elevators with their debut album. Yeah, when I first got this album, I'd be lying if I said that I wasn't intrigued by the album artwork. I had certainly known of this group, but I was unsure of whether I actually liked the songs or liked the sound on the album. It took some time to grow on me, but I kept listening to it, and eventually it kind of clicked. And so far it's just kept getting higher on my list of garage psych albums. And I mean, it's a shame what happened to Rocky Erickson being sent to the mental institution, from my knowledge, over a single joint, which I think is just ridiculous. But yeah, I mean, talk about an influential band. Um, they were really some of the pioneers of psychedelic rock. They were the first band to call themselves psychedelic, um, coming from Texas of all places. When you think about psychedelia, you don't really think too much about places like Texas or like Louisiana. You more think about like California and yeah. I mean, that's certainly where the scene would develop. But you have to give credit to these innovators, for establishing a sound of their own, especially with the electric jug, which I love. Every single song on that album has the electric jug on it, or most of them do. Um, but yeah, I mean, I've even contemplated, my dad has an old milk jug down in the basement, picking that up and trying to use it the same way that they did. But yeah, I mean, it's an incredibly raw record, especially my pressing of it, because they made an attempt to go through and remaster it. Um, my copy of the album, uh, I believe they said it relies upon the combination of two stereo channels into a single mono channel, um, because they said the original master tapes for the album are actually missing. So they had to resort to trying to rework the stereo mix into a mono mix, which it's difficult to do. But they didn't do any EQ work, like nothing like that. So you're getting the raw, unadulterated sound of the 13th floor elevators. Yeah, so that's about all I have to say about that one. Next up, this is quite a change in pace here, but I had to give some love to this album. Gordon Lightfoot, Gore's Gold. Gordon Lightfoot's always been a very important figure within the realm of my musical education. Yeah, I would have to list him as one of my favorite Canadian songwriters of all time, or even up there with my favorite songwriters of all time. I think people remember him for a lot of his classic songs, but if you do a deep dive into Gordon's back catalog, I think many people would be pleasantly surprised by how many great songs this guy has. This record is just one example of that. So I would heavily recommend this record for anyone who's looking to get into Gordon Lightfoot. This compiles what he essentially, I think, what he felt was his best work up until that point in time. That record came out in 1975, and he'd been releasing records since 1966. So yeah, about 10 years that he'd been releasing music, and yeah, there's just some really amazing songs on there. And I find his music. People talk about a lot of different Canadian singer songwriters, like Joni Mitchell, for example, Neil Young. I've heard Leonard Cohen. Yeah, I'm trying to think, but I don't know. There's just something about Lightfoot's music and the way he portrays a story. Just like touches me. Like it's an emotional experience listening to Gordon Lightfoot's music, and I can't say that about some of the other artists that I mentioned. Yeah, so I'm not trying to talk too much about each individual album, but yeah. So next up here we got another Canadian band, you could say, even though the front man is not. That's David Clayton Thomas and the Shays. I believe they were based out of Toronto. I have to listen to this one a bit more. I found this when I was digging through some vinyl bins out west in a little thrift store. Um, yeah, but I knew of the album, and the vinyl's in very good condition. Um, yeah, I don't know. It's a pretty solid, like from what I know of it, it's a pretty solid blues rock album. But yeah, there's a very good single though online if people are looking for something to check out. It's called "Brainwashed" by David Clayton Thomas. Uh, Incredibly hard hitting song for 1966 when it was released, and it also features some political commentary as well about the time period, which is, I mean, to be expected. You got the Vietnam War, you got all that other stuff going on. There's a lot to be concerned about, at that time. Yeah, so now we venture into some Motown music. We've got the Temptations with Getting Ready. I think that this is their best album, in all honesty. Accidentally left the price on there. Yeah, I don't know. It's got that classic Motown sound. The drums rigged up to sound as distorted as they possibly can sound. But no, it's authentic pop music, I guess you could say. It's not overproduced, nothing like that. It's like, the music of Motown was certainly commercial, but I think even when you understand that their music was commercial, they how do I explain this? Yeah, they didn't overproduce their bands. Like they didn't it was a raw sound, even if the sound was fairly commercial. Yeah. I'll leave that for some other time. Yeah. Next up we got Strange Days by The Doors. This is an original copy, 1967, on Elektra Records. And the more I've gotten to know Elektra Records, I have more respect for them. Just for the sheer number of influential bands that they signed to their label, they were willing to take some like fairly large risks as a label. They signed the Doors, they signed Clearlight, they signed the MC5, the Stooges, who else? Love, Paul Butterfield Blues Band. It's kind of hard to think of a more solid lineup, I think, for a record label to kind of start up with. I mean, I understand they did have records before those artists joined, but I believe those were their first endeavors into the rock arena. Yeah. I mean, it's a tough call for me to say whether I like this one more than the Doors' first album, because the first album is just a classic for me. But there are undoubtedly some shining moments here. When the music's over, Strange Days, when they run Jim's voice through a synthesizer. Oh, excuse me. And my phone just died. So I'm sorry about that, you guys. Anyways, where was I here? On to the next record, I suppose. It is called Where Did the Sunshine Go by The Glass Cage. All 6 songs are in here. I wouldn't say this is essential for somebody who's into garage rock, but I would say it is really cool because you get to hear about the history of the band, and you get to know a little bit more about the members and how they came to exist. Yeah, I mean, it's an incredibly rare acetate. I believe there's only 2 to 3 copies that exist. Yeah, I think it was it warranted a mass release. So yeah, I would highly recommend checking that out. Also, if you happen to be looking for any garage rock or proto punk from the '60s, I did make a playlist on my YouTube channel solely dedicated to that type of music. And I'm quite happy with it. It's got about 40 songs on it right now, so I'll see where see where it takes me down the rabbit hole. But yeah, now the next band I'm going to move on to is on the Verve Forecast label, the Paupers with their album Magic People. This band I feel is unfairly overlooked, especially when you consider the longevity and prominence of the Verve Forecast label. Yeah, I mean, they just had some really top-notch, tight musicians, and this is a very solid album of sunshine pop, psych, folk. Yeah, I mean, you get a lot of different flavors within this record. It's very eclectic music, if you couldn't tell by the front cover here. They do experiment with psychedelia. This record was released on July 1st of 1967, which also happens to be Canada Day. This band was from Toronto, and what's kind of cool about this record is if you pull it out, you have sort of an inner sleeve here. It's not in great shape. I mean, it's a used copy. Actually, I think it to be an original copy. But yeah, I mean, these guys were some of the tightest musicians, I think, on the Toronto scene at the time. It's even reported within the album sleeve that they rehearsed for 13 hours a day for 21 days straight. When their new leader, Adam Mitchell, joined the band. And so when they hit the scene, it was just like people wondered where the heck these guys had come from. You know, it even sounds like there was a show where they opened for the Jefferson Airplane, and they just blew the Jefferson Airplane off stage because they were just like, you know, even Geddy Lee himself cites Denny Gerard of the Paupers as an influence on his playing, which should tell you everything you need to know about Denny Gerard. Yeah. All right. Here we go. Next record here is Chilliwack's debut album. Kind of a interesting cover. Sort of disturbs some people, but I believe that it's an indigenous artifact of the Iroquois Confederacy in New York State that existed prior to the colonization of the Americas. I believe it was a face mask of some kind. But overall, I would say this is one of my favorite Chilliwack albums. Man, I mean, they start off pretty strong here, but I wouldn't expect any less from a band that formed from the ashes of the Collectors, who are another great Canadian psych rock band. And their first album is like chef's kiss. Man, yeah, just really, really cool stuff. All right, this album is more sentimental. Yeah, I've been listening to it a lot more lately. Kind of coincides with my changing tastes, but it would be Pet Sounds by the Beach Boys. And there isn't really anything I can say about this album that hasn't already been said before. But regardless, I think it's nice to incorporate here because I've been listening to it so often. Yeah, just a really great album. I know some people talk like it's overrated, and I can understand where they're coming from. But I'm also like, I think one of the reasons why people cite this as one of the greatest albums ever is because they feel an emotional connection with it, and not everyone has that emotional connection, which isn't their fault. But I don't know. I think people hold this record in high esteem for that reason, that it makes them feel a certain way. And I feel the same way. I mean, I love this record because it's just, you can put it on and you can relax, and it's very relatable, you know, in lyrical content, musical content. We also have the Byrds' first album, Mr. Tambourine Man. This is an original mono copy of the record. And I do a similar setup where disconnect one of my stereo speakers to get the full mono effect here. And I have actually noticed that it is quite a lot punchier when you revert to the single channel. Yeah, I mean, this is a pretty strong debut album, I think, of folk rock material. Yeah. And then finally, this is kind of ending on a weird note. I've got Mass in F minor by the Electric Prunes. Very interesting story about how I stumbled across this album. The first record I got by the Electric Prunes was their first album. It was a natural progression to their second album, and then after that, I was like, I knew a little bit about Mass in F minor, but I didn't know a whole heck of a lot. So I took a bargain by ordering it, and I actually ended up falling in love with this album. It's one of my favorite psychedelic rock albums, and I think it could be described as an early progressive rock album because it has an entire concept of the Latin Mass. It's not just a typical psychedelic album. This has got some complexity to it. And yeah, I mean, I think it was a fairly daring project for 1968 and technically 67 when you consider that this was recorded that year. Yeah, so Mass in F minor, I would say check it out. And then the final album I wanted to mention, even though I don't have a copy of it, unfortunately, is Freak Out by Frank Zappa and the Mothers of Invention. And I've been listening to that one quite a lot lately as well. I feel as though I'm drawn to that record for a couple of reasons. It being fairly satirical, kind of offers you a look into the 1960s that other bands can't really provide for you. I'm drawn to it because nothing else sounds like it. And I can say the same for Mass in F minor. I'm drawn to Freak Out and a lot of the Mothers of Invention's early albums because there's nothing else from the 60s that sounds like it. And it's absolutely mind-boggling to me to think that Freak Out came out before Revolver did by the Beatles. And the Beatles even have cited Freak Out as an influence on Sgt. Pepper and some of their later works too. Yeah, I'd like to thank everyone for watching the video, sticking around, and I'll see you in the next one.